Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first episode of Feed My Sheep Earthquake Reports. My name is Terry Rempel. I'll be your host tonight. My apologies for the quality of the equipment, but we do have new equipment en route. What we're currently showing you on the map is the one reported earthquake in Indiana today, and USGS currently has this as a 3.8. Now, I'd like to point out that from Kokomo, there were 112 felt reports, and from Champaign, Illinois, we had 64 felt reports. We also had Volcano Discovery also showed it as appearing in Indianapolis and in Bloomington. We're just going to show you Bloomington. I'm going to slide in here. And here is the Bloomington seismogram. Just have a look at that. And you see that there is one earthquake on the screen. Now, we're going to now show you Lafayette, Indiana. And this is the very same earthquake. You can't hide a large earthquake within one state. There is only one earthquake showing in this time period. And what we showed you in Bloomington, is the same earthquake that we see much more clearly in Lafayette, Indiana. And Lafayette was indeed much closer to this earthquake, which was on the Wabash River. So rivers commonly follow faults, and this being right beside the Wabash River, it is very likely that the Wabash River does in fact run in a fault, and that fault is the one that shifted. Now, we've seen a lot of activity around Indiana, but not a lot of activity in the past few weeks from Indiana itself. About 4 weeks ago, we saw a lot of activity from, or 3 weeks ago, from Wyandotte Cave, Indiana, that site there. And it shifted very heavily with BLF waves. So we have seen some localized activity, but not for some time. And the New Madrid has been exceptionally active recently. We're going to move now to Roper, North Carolina. And here we see two uplift earthquakes. We can tell that they're uplift earthquakes by the tail in and tail out somewhat matching on either side. These are of significant size and certainly would be in the reportable category, but they would not propagate widely because an earthquake that expends its energy upwards does not transmit through the crust very well. We're now moving to Hickman, Kentucky. And we see a very, very significant amount of activity leading up to the Indiana earthquake. This Hickman, Kentucky site shows at least 10 2.5 and greater earthquakes, and significant numbers of earthquakes that are smaller. There's so many that are reportable here, and they're entirely omitted. This is quite shameful. We'll move to Fairfield, Illinois, where we had a very, very high tremor level leading up to the Indiana earthquake. So this is Fairfield, Illinois, a lot of tremors. This shows that the New Madrid Fault was moving in a lot of areas, and ancillary faults were also moving leading into the Indiana earthquake. This is other earthquake activity that was not reported in Monahans, Texas. This large signal in black is in excess of a 3.0. This is about a 3.5. The reported earthquake in Indiana, I believe, was closer to the mid 5 range, or low 5.0 range, maybe high 4. It was certainly not as small as they have it currently at a 3.8. This one is not as large, but it's close. And we see further activity. This is Guadalupe, New Mexico. And how many earthquakes are there here that should be reported? I count, starting from the top in green, there's one in green, there's another in black, that's the Texas earthquake. Moving down, we see another in red on the left-hand side. That's reportable. The one that's blue moving over is reportable. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for certain that should have been reported in the New Mexico and Texas areas, and they didn't make the feed at all. This is a crying shame. So now we see Mountain Grove, Missouri, and this was activity leading into this earthquake that was further north as well, all the way down in Missouri. This is a major shift along the Mississippi River. And this is further showing the shift down below. Now, how long did this last? Well, each line is 15 minutes. We see it begin halfway through the page in blue. So there's 7.5 minutes. We see another full line in green. That's 15, so that's 22 minutes. And then we see about 9 minutes more in black. So that's 31 minutes of ongoing fault shift. That's very significant. And there's some small earthquakes mixed in that are certainly in the reportable size. So we have reportable sized earthquakes now in how many states? Here we are in Windberg, Texas. And there are Windberg, Tennessee. And there are actually a couple of reportable earthquakes in these. These are smaller tremor levels, but it lasted for 2 hours. 2 hours is very significant. Here we're in Lepanto, Arkansas, and we're back to reportable earthquakes again. You look at the size of the red signal in about the middle of all of the activity. We see some large signals in red down below and in blue. There's certainly magnitude 2 and greater earthquakes mixed in Lepanto, Arkansas, and this also led into the Indiana activity. And when we see VLF activity, which is what's coming up next, this shows you just how significant the activity was along the New Madrid Fault. This is from Vicksburg, Mississippi. And the faults shifted there for almost 40 minutes. Well, actually, it's just in excess of, it's 10 minutes per segment. Just in excess of 20 minutes. That's when it's off the chart size, that's a very significant fault shift. We have the same thing happening in Standing Stone, Pennsylvania. Again, about the same duration, in excess of 20 minutes of fault shift. We see a much smaller one in Indiana. This is Wyandotte Cave, which I mentioned has moved very heavily with VLF waves in the past. And here we have Hopedale, Illinois, with a very large VLF wave series also. This is a lot of areas shifting with this seemingly one earthquake in Indiana. You can see it's a much, much larger event. Here's Mount Ida in Arkansas, and that's a lot of VLF activity again. Again, VLF activity is fault shift or plate shift. And here we finish up with Black Hills, South Dakota, and it's turned black. It's had many hours of VLF waves already. This is a very, very significant shift of a fault, an ancillary fault to the New Madrid in South Dakota. So that wraps up the activity update. This is a major increase in the amount of activity that we've been seeing in the New Madrid. And the New Madrid was also already very active. So on top of being very active, it's become more active. This is not signaling that we're about to have a New Madrid earthquake, but we are still continuing to build activity. And this activity is showing a progression. We had very significant activity in Texas leading into all of this today, in Kingsville, Texas, in Dagmar, Montana. Other sites in Montana were moving. Colorado was moving. We had sites in Wild Horse, Oregon. Wild Horses Valley, Oregon had a very significant move a couple of days ago. So all across the continental United States, we're having shifting going on. The primary focus of the shifting is along the New Madrid, but that energy works its way west and impacts the west coast of North America as well, and all the points in between. So this is going to cause a reaction downstream across North America. We can expect a progression of force from east to west across North America to occur as a result of this continued New Madrid activity. Thank you for joining us, and stay safe. We appreciate your viewership, and God bless.
Good night.